Chapter 6. The Impostor. The caller was Mr. Drew. "I've had a long conversation with Roger Gonzalez," he told Nancy. "He's eager to see you and has asked that you meet him at 12 o'clock tomorrow at his golf club. Mr. Cosgrove will give you directions. You're to tell the man at the desk that you're Miss Boonton." Nancy did not reply immediately. "Something wrong?" her father asked. "I don't know. Dad, have you any idea where Mr. Gonzalez called from?" "No, his house, I suppose. Why?" "Because I think his phone is being tapped." "Why do you say that?" "His enemies knew all about our arrival," Nancy said, and told her father about the kidnapping attempt. "I don't like this," he exclaimed. "The case is more dangerous than I expected." "One thing is sure," Nancy said. "Our masquerade is known. When we visited Crocodile Island, someone took our pictures." "Great," her father murmured. "Perhaps you should come home." "Oh, no!" Nancy cried out. "Please, Dad, we'll manage. We have Danny to help us, and even though the crooks know who we are and why we're here, we'll figure out something to outsmart them. Besides, I have to keep my date with Mr. Gonzalez tomorrow, so I can warn him." "True," her father agreed. "If the crocodile ecology people overheard my conversation with Roger today, they'll probably try to follow you and prevent you from reaching the club. Keep that in mind." "I will," Nancy promised. "Don't worry. I'll think of something." "All right, and good luck." When Nancy told the others about the new developments, they agreed that she should meet Mr. Gonzalez the following day. "I suggest," Mrs. Cosgrove said, "that when you leave here you go shopping, then take a cab to the club from a store. This way you won't be followed." "That's a good idea," Nancy agreed. The next day, Mr. Cosgrove drove her to a department store where she made a few purchases, then went out a side door and took a taxi. When Nancy arrived at the club, she went to the desk and asked for Mr. Gonzalez. "I'm Miss Boonton," she added. The clerk looked at her searchingly. "There must be some mistake," he said slowly. "Miss Boonton is already here." "What?" Nancy was stunned by the announcement. So that's how her enemies had double-crossed her. She asked the man for a piece of paper and a pencil and quickly scribbled a note to Mr. Gonzalez. Nancy explained the situation and asked if he would come to the lobby. Then she handed the note to the clerk. "Would you please send this to Mr. Gonzalez?" she requested. The clerk summoned a boy, and within a few minutes, Nancy saw a handsome, dark-haired man of about 50, wearing a white suit, approach the desk. The clerk motioned to the girl. "This is Mr. Gonzalez," he said. Nancy nodded, then asked her father's friend to move a little distance away so they would not be overheard. "I'm Nancy Drew," she whispered. "The Miss Boonton you're entertaining is an impostor." Nancy opened her purse and showed Mr. Gonzalez her driver's license. He looked at it, then at her in amazement. "How do you do?" he said in a low voice. "I'm dreadfully sorry about this. Do you know who the other girl is?" "No," Nancy replied. "Let's go inside and find out." Quickly, the two went to the dining room, and Mr. Gonzalez led the way toward a table at the window. Suddenly, he stopped short. "She's gone!" he exclaimed. "The other Miss Boonton is gone!" Nancy was not surprised to hear it. She deduced that when Mr. Gonzalez had received the note and gone to the desk, the girl realized that her trick had been discovered, and she decided to disappear at once. She had a good head start, the girl detective thought. Nancy suggested that they give an alarm to the man at the main desk so he could ask the clubhouse guard and various workers on the grounds and golf course to look for the impostor. Mr. Gonzalez went to the head waiter's desk and picked up the phone. Nancy heard him tell the story to the man in charge of the club, and asked that a search be made for a tall, slender young woman with a lot of blonde hair. She was wearing a white skirt and blouse with a red and white sleeveless vest, he said. The message was passed along at once. Nancy, impatient to find out where the girl had gone, told Mr. Gonzalez she wanted to do a little hunting on her own account. He offered to go with her. "Where do you want to look first?" he asked. "How about inspecting all the cars parked on the grounds? She might be hiding in one." Mr. Gonzalez led the way to the far side of the dining room and out a sliding glass door. A caddy came by, and Mr. Gonzalez asked him if he had seen the girl. The answer was no, and the search went on. They checked every car in the area. All they found inside them was a sleeping dog in one with an open window and a large teddy bear in another. "Of course, there's a third possibility," Nancy said. "The phony Miss Boonton could have been brought to the club by a friend who could have waited for her." "True," Mr. Gonzalez agreed. As they turned back to the clubhouse, Nancy stopped a couple who were driving in. She asked if they had seen a girl dressed in white except for a red and white vest. "We don't know whether she was on foot or in a car." "No, we didn't," the man replied. "Thank you," Nancy said, disappointed. Moments later, a sports car came from the opposite direction. Mr. Gonzalez asked the driver if he had noticed a girl on the road. "A blonde wearing a red and white vest?" the man asked. "That's right," Nancy answered, excited. "Where did you see her?" "I passed her about a mile down the road. She was riding in a brown car with a man." The information was sufficient for Nancy to conclude that the fraudulent Miss Boonton had made a quick getaway. "No use in looking for her anymore," she told Mr. Gonzalez. He nodded. "I owe you a lunch. You must be starved. Let's return to the dining room." After they had ordered salads and iced tea, Nancy and her host talked about the mystery. "I don't understand how this could have happened," he said, puzzled. "I do," Nancy said. "Your phone must be tapped. Do you remember where you were when you called my father on various occasions?" Mr. Gonzalez frowned. "The first call I made from home. The second one, too. No, wait a minute. I made that one from the club. Yesterday I phoned from home again." Nancy nodded. "That proves my theory," she said, and told him about all that had happened, including the kidnapping attempt. The man turned pale. "This means that not only am I in great danger, but you are too," he said. "I never would have asked you to come here if I had known." "Mr. Gonzalez," Nancy said, "I think you have more to worry about than I do. I have 2 friends with me and a boy is helping us. We'll be all right. But you would probably be better off if you left this club as little as possible while we're working on the case." Mr. Gonzalez nodded. "I see your point, and I'll do as you say." Nancy changed the subject. "You told my father that you were suspicious of your business partners. Who are they, and exactly what worries you?" "There are 3 partners in the Crocodile Ecology Company," Mr. Gonzalez said. "Hal Gimler, George Sacco, and me. Recently, the 2 active partners were evasive when I asked them about certain matters. I had a feeling they were dodging my questions about what's going on. I found out they made trips to Mexico numerous times, and I know we have no dealings with that country. I had the feeling that they were trying to deceive me." "That's when you called Dad the first time?" Nancy asked. "Right. When they realized I suspected them, they asked me to sell my interest in the company to them. And at one point I felt that would be the best thing to do. That was when I called your father the second time and canceled your reservations." "But then you changed your mind?" "Yes, because it turned out that I was not getting any cooperation at all from my partners. I'm glad you're here, but I don't like the idea of exposing you to danger." "We're used to that," Nancy said dryly. "Tell me, Have you ever seen a submarine or a periscope near Crocodile Island? No. Why do you ask? Nancy told him how she and her friends had spotted a periscope, which had disappeared before they could get a closer look. Mr. Gonzalez frowned. The company could be shipping out crocodiles and not listing the sales. A submarine would be a splendid way of concealing the transaction. He went on to say that some older reptiles had disappeared, and when he had inquired about them, his partners had merely said they had escaped. I don't see how they could have, with the fencing there is all around the island, Nancy commented. That's true, her companion agreed. How much of all this did you tell the other Miss Boonton? Nancy asked. I mentioned that I was suspicious of Hal Gimler and George Sacco because I couldn't get straight answers out of them. Then you arrived and she took off. You didn't mention the phone calls to my father? Only the first one. By this time, Mr. Gonzalez and Nancy had finished eating. They left the table and walked to the entrance. The clerk at the desk called a taxi for Nancy. While waiting for it to arrive, she told Mr. Gonzalez how much she had enjoyed talking with him. Now I'll work harder to solve your mystery. You've made a very good start, he said, patting her on one shoulder. From here on, I'll make calls only from the club or a public phone booth. Nancy rode off to the Cosgrove home. When she arrived, the couple was alone with Bess. George and Danny went out in the borrowed boat, Bess said. I thought they'd be back by now. They may have hit low tide, Mr. Cosgrove said. Nancy, tell us how your luncheon date was. Did you get to the club all right? I did, only someone else got there before me, Nancy said, and gave full details about the impostor. Incredible! Mrs. Cosgrove burst out. Just think of the nerve of that young lady, pretending to be you. I don't like the whole thing, Mr. Cosgrove added. These people are obviously very clever and don't shy away from anything underhanded. We'll be careful, Nancy said. When Danny and George had not returned 2 hours later, she began to worry. Did they have another encounter with the Whisper? She wondered. End of chapter 6.